everyone. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Relate to You. We're so excited to talk on this subject of low points in Christian walks.
Yes.
I think it's really important because I think that, you know, even though that this is a faith-based channel and we obviously talk about our experiences and both good and bad relating to our Christian walk, I think sometimes it could be perceived that maybe we just are always on a high,
Right.
or we're always doing well spiritually or on our Christian walk. And I think it's important to highlight, you know, have there ever been moments in your life where you had a low moment in your Christian walk, and how did you come out of it? Because I think that hopefully that there is someone that is watching this. You might be in that season and you might be like, I don't know how to come out of it, or I'm the only one, and you're not. So, Lula, first and foremost, how long could you say you've been walking with the Lord, or how long do you think you could say I've been in a relationship with God?
Man, I had on and offs. But for example, when I was a child, I would say from age 5 to when I was around 11, 12. And I don't think it was mostly because my mom implemented that. I think we really enjoyed being in Bible school. Kelly and I, we really it was, I mean, every summer we had school, Bible school.
Yeah.
And so it was really fun. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And I really liked the feeling of knowing that if I prayed, someone was listening. So I think I that was very innocent-like, very childlike. And then it became a thing of teenage years, and it became a thing of, oh, my mom is implementing it, like she's making us go, and and then I think at that same time I had very bad experiences at church. And okay, I shouldn't say bad, but I had very immature experiences at church that to a hurt child only reinforced, okay, the world is not as nice, even when they're saying that they're nice people.
Right. That's good.
And that to me was even more like, okay, these are people that go on to say that, oh, the love of God and the love of this, and love thy neighbor, and all this, but then you go to school with them and they're a completely different person. Or you see how they treat others, and you're like, that's not really love, like, if you ask me, and so me desilusioné mucho de la iglesia at some point of like
your teen years,
my teen years. And then to that, add the fact that I was also dealing with my own like traumas and my own things.
Right.
So all of that, it just made me feel like, okay, I know the world is not a safe place, but now even at church, like, okay, how do you,
where can I get refuge?
And not just that, but how do you reconcile that? I get the world can be a certain way, but why at church too?
Right.
I couldn't fathom that.
Yeah.
And obviously, very immature of me to just say, everyone's a hypocrite, even here, whatever. So I think solid, because it's just, I feel it in my heart, and it's now a decision I've made. 5 years of having a really strong relationship with God. And when I say strong, it doesn't mean that I'm just like on my knees every day and I'm reading the Bible, but that I know no matter what or no matter who, I have that with God.
And it's your decision.
And it's my decision, yeah. So, to some people, I might be a new soul, a baby Christian. I don't quite feel like that, because even though I did go through that, I did grow up in church. I a lot of previous to actually having a real relationship with God, a lot of my guidelines or the way I lived life were Christian based morals
Right.
and
There were fundamentals
and
already.
principles. So in a way, to me, it was never that I didn't believe. I didn't want to believe, but I never stopped believing.
I see.
So yeah.
For
I'm sorry, that was a long.
No, that's.
a long
I think that's helpful.
story to
I think
answer
that's
that.
helpful because, you know, for me it was. I feel like if I look back as far as where my Christian walk started, I was born into it. You know, I was born into a Christian household. I was born from Christian parents. You know, I grew up very. There was a strict rule of what went on in our daily lives. You know, and I've mentioned this. We would not be able to go to bed without being able to read a scripture. And, you know, we would have, I don't know how, I feel like there's like, you know, how Christian did you grow up, you know? But like,
What are the levels?
where are the levels, you know? But I remember growing up watching just Christian songs over and over, Christian kids or kids singing Christian songs. That's all I was watching. Veggie Tales. I mean, my mom, whenever, like, for whatever reason, we couldn't go to church because the weather, whatever, we would have church at our house and we would pass a little, you know, bowl of ofrendita and you'd put your pennies, you know. I mean, that's the way I grew up. And you know, with that, it was something I enjoyed. I didn't go through that experience of not wanting to go to church. It was always something innate. You know, we go to church. We, you know, Sundays are for church, Wednesdays are for church, or Tuesdays were for church. And then there's an event and then you hang out with people from church. And that's all that we did, you know, growing up. And then we moved to a different church and there was even more people. There was even more kids, you know, to play with. And now there were camps and now there were services. So I know that even in high school, even though I went through most phases, what, you know, teenagers go through where you want to hang out. And I'm thankful I hung out with the right crowd. You know, they were very smart kids. It wasn't like they were drinking, they were partying or partying or anything. But I know that even to them who weren't, you know, the most rebellious of children or of teenagers, they did think how much time I spent at church was unusual. They were like, okay, so why can't you come? You know, and it's like, oh, because we're having, you know, a district service, you know, and they're like, okay, you know, but like we're all going to go to Disneyland. And it's like, well, first of all, I can't even go because my mom was very protective. And they were like, you'd rather go to a service than to go to like Disneyland or something. So that was also like part of it. And then I was always involved in ministry. I was in praise team. I was doing the life group. I got baptized at 12, so it's been 15 years since I've been baptized. So as I say, my what is it, like my pedigree of being a Christian, it sounds like, oh wow, this girl, she's probably never had a low point. But I think it's important to add that despite of the fact that it was my norm and it was something that I was used to, I was on autopilot for a lot of it. And as far as having an actual relationship with God, that did not really take into effect until about a year before I got married. I think that's when things really started to shift in my mind of I'm entering a different season and it's requiring of me to be different. And it really launched once I got married. Because prior to that, it was always something that my family did. And then I enjoyed it, lucky for my parents. But it wasn't like it came... No, I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say like I was doing it entirely for the purposes of this is my decision and I want to serve Jesus, you know, with all of my heart,
Right.
Come what may, whatever I feel, you know. Sometimes it was to see my friends. Sometimes it was to see my crush, you know, and because those were the people I hung around with. But when I got married, praying was for me, because even to the last day that I got married, my parents still went into my room, knelt down, and we prayed together and we read together. So once I got married, it's like, it's up to us. It's up to me. Am I going to go to church because I want to, or because someone else is, influencing me to make that decision? Okay, we came home, tired on a Wednesday. Are we going to make an effort to go to church because we have to? And working at church is also part of it, because sometimes you could even be on autopilot for that, and growing up and being an employee at church was always something like, I'm so close to God. I'm at every service. I'm at every single thing, every function. I'm as close as you can get to God. But even then, it's like there were so many times that I was struggling because I didn't really have a secure, consistent relationship with God. And so it's been about 3 years almost, or 3 to 4 years actually, about the same time. And that's when I can honestly say things have been more consistent, and things have been more because I want to, because I'm yearning for it. So, my next question to you, that would be, now that you've shown how long you've had your relationship with God per se, what was one of the biggest low moments for you where you either realized that you were just not, like, God was just not it? Maybe it was a season, maybe it was just a moment you made a mistake, or rather, have you gone through a low point in your life where you struggle to have a relationship with God?
Oh yes. In high school, and I think I've mentioned it so many times that it probably sounds like a broken record, but it was just that. It was that, like, and it's very interesting because it almost seemed like everything fell into place for me to get more and more disappointed. Like things would happen to me where it was just like, there you go, and I mean, I don't want to get into details, but or maybe I am, who knows. But there were instances where we would go to church and it was clear that I wasn't very welcomed, or it was made clear that I was different, that I looked different, and therefore the treatment was different. And I mean, and I'm a very I don't think I'm as much as I used to be, but for me, when it was one of those things where, oh, okay, you're gonna treat me different. Let me give you material so you can really treat me different. So, I mean, there were times where I was just like, I'm gonna take the biggest earrings I own.
I see.
And that way, when I receive your treatment, it's for a reason. Not just because you feel like it, but yeah, I'm wearing earrings, and or let me get the most flashing nail polish that could ever exist, so that way when I go in there, you have material to treat me the way you're treating me, because that no se me hace fair. So at least I'm giving you something,
Oh, I see.
So I had that mentality, that very wrong, and very rebellious mentality. And then at some point I just stopped going. And then, I mean, not that I just stopped going, but I was also like, okay, I'm going to go to college, university, I'm not going to see these people ever again. So I go to college, and again, I was still with that mindset of like, oh, church, I don't know, whatever. But I did feel like I was missing something. I did feel like, okay, I'm doing all of this to better my life. I'm in university. I'm working. I'm paying stuff. I'm an active adult.
Yes.
Why am I feeling empty? Why am I feeling like, despite having all of this, despite not asking my mom for money for my basic necessities, I still feel like I'm after something and I don't know what it is. Because it was obviously not education, because I was getting educated. It was obviously not a job, because I had a job. So what is it? And the more I kept asking myself, the more I thought, well, I know what it is. I just don't want to admit it to myself. because I've been trying to deny it for so long. But I thought the moment I thought, okay, for so long I had the idea that church equaled God, and that was wrong.
Yeah.
You know, yes, now I see it. It's important to go to church, but it's not God. Church doesn't and shouldn't equate to your relationship to God.
Yeah.
So when I started thinking that way, I thought, oh, okay, then I can pray on my own. I can find God on my own. And then if that allows me to start going to church, I will. And so I did. I graduated and everything fell into place for me to start to really feel like, okay, I'm not going to place value on how people perceive me. I'm going to place value on how I know from the Bible how God perceives me. And that really helped. Because at that point I thought, I'm not, obviously in my very, very rebellious way, I thought, I'm not going to give material anymore for people to treat me a certain way. I'm going to give material so God can see my heart.
That, I'm sorry, guys, that could preach on its own. That is extremely beneficial for someone to, I think, heal in a lot of areas.
And I think you're going on the right way. I started thinking, what's beneficial to me? To ponder and think, oh my God, the church has done me so wrong. There's so many brothers and sisters that have told me this and that. I don't want to go. Or is it more beneficial and healing for me to think they're just as human as I am?
Right.
I could do what they're doing if I were in their place, perhaps. Yeah. You know, they're just acting the way I would have acted if I was in that same situation. So I'm going to justify. I'm going to
give the benefit of
the doubt. I'm going to not put value on their words or their actions when I know that's not the truth. That's more beneficial. So I thought, okay, logically speaking, that's more beneficial. Not for the other person. I'm not justifying for the benefit of the other person. The other person probably doesn't realize what they've done. I'm justifying for my own benefit. Right. I'm trying to see the good in people for my own benefit, to take care of my heart. And so that was when I started doing that. But very, very, God has a really good sense of humor, right? Because I started to realize that, and I'm thinking, okay, you know, that's a good thought. I'm gonna do that. And then I get offered to work at church, and it's like, okay, yeah.
Te falta aprender.
And that was a whole other thing. That was a whole other. That's, you know how we know that when you ask God for patience or love or understanding, all these really good things, goodness. It's not like one day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, yes, I have all the love and all the patience and all the understanding. No, God will send you opportunities to show love, grace, understanding, and all this. And so for me, working at church was that, okay, now that I know all this understanding from God, how am I going to apply it?
Right.
And yeah, that was tough. That was tough, definitely. But I wouldn't say it was a low moment. I think that was a very high moment for me. Because
in retrospect,
I thought God is giving me a chance to grow and to show up for me and for him.
Right.
Not for the other people, but because now, like you said, now I get to decide, do I want to go to church? Do I want to make a difference within my church?
Right.
Do I want to make a difference within the people, you know, of welcoming people and being literally, you know, it sounds cliche, but being the difference that you want to see.
Yes.
And so I took it and I was like, yeah.
So would you say that your low point was influenced or it was caused by the way that you were treated? Or because of what you were going through in your personal life, you became more susceptible to that kind of hurt in a sense?
It was a combination. Because, you know, years later, now I'm active in church. I'm volunteering. I'm still not the secretary, I'm volunteering. I mean, that year I volunteered for so many events.
Oh, okay.
That year
So
I
before.
volunteered. Yeah, it's before I was a secretary. And I volunteer for the Christmas shop. I volunteer for Bible school. I volunteer for concerts, for the junior concerts. I mean, it was insane. I really thought, okay, I'm going to make a difference within me. And,
Right.
you know, and so I volunteered for all these events. And I said I wasn't going to say details, but I volunteered for this particular event, and this sister that you know, that whole day she made it very difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
She made it very difficult. She made it she was very clear about, I wouldn't say that she didn't like me, but it was very clear that she didn't like a lot of what I was saying, or a lot of what I was trying to implement within said activity or whatever. So at some point I guess, you know, certain things weren't working out, or I wasn't giving the reaction that she wanted or whatever. And at some point she pointed at my tattoos, you know, because I have tattoos, guys. And she made it very loud and very clear that, you know, oh, those are new. It looked like you just got them. And in my head, and to someone that
Just trying to get back to church.
exactly, to someone that is trying to get back to church, to someone that perhaps at that point regrets having done some things, and someone goes up to you and says, oh, those look new.
Yeah.
Those look like you just got them. Yeah, it really broke me, you know. And I was like, okay. And I said, no, I didn't. I got him a long time ago. And again, she went in there and said it again. And in my head is like, I knew God had worked with me, because any other time I would have told her off. I would have said it to her face, you are wrong for this. Like, if you know, it was clear that I was not new to the church, because a lot of people know me. A lot of people that have been there for years knew me. But it was clear that I was coming back. That was my comeback, you know? And for her to say that, it was just like, okay, you're not, that this isn't very welcoming. So, but I was like, I'm not going to say anything. I didn't say nothing. I was just like, oh, you know.
Fists clenched.
Yeah, I'm just like, and I went home. I cried. I cried, and I thought, I'm not going back. I don't want to go back. You know, that's just one sister, but God knows what the other people thought, you know, because she made it she said it loud.
She put
loud
you
enough.
out there.
Yeah, she put me out there. And so I thought, and, you know, my mom's telling me, don't do it, you know, don't think that way. They're all human. And then that's when it clicked. This is exactly what I had resolved myself to do. I had determined myself to justify others. I had determined myself to give people the benefit of the doubt. I had determined myself that I wasn't going to act like 18, 19, or, you know, 17-year-old me anymore. And
here's, in a sense,
my first challenge, there it goes. And I did. I showed up. I showed up that Sunday. I showed up every time after that. And so
it didn't defeat you.
Going back to your question, I think it was my first low moment in high school. It was a combination of everything. But this low moment, coming back and trying to feel like I never left, was challenged in that sense of, like, there are people that in their human nature, just like me, just like anyone else, will sort of make it difficult for you to come back. Will sort of be piedra de tropiezo, para que también tú digas, oh, then I'm not going.
Yeah.
I'm not going back.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you need to look within yourself and see, is that really beneficial? Is that, like, and not just that, but también maybe in a very proudful way, think, okay, si no regreso, wouldn't that be just reinforcing what they're thinking of me? And I mean, to me that worked because I'm a very proudful person. So to me, I was like, no, I'm not gonna show her that she put me down or anything.
Classic,
In fact,
Lula. Classic.
yeah, exactly. In fact, I'm gonna show the opposite. I'm gonna be courteous, and I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to be kind, even if I don't feel it. And I did, and
That takes a lot of strength.
Until this day, you know, there are things that, like, I've gotten asked, why did you get your tattoos? Mm-hmm. Would you ever erase them? You know, and in my head is like, just like they're asking me that, people are asking other people, why did you do that? You know, and they're very, I guess what I'm trying to say is you need to have tact.
Yeah.
You need to be,
yeah.
You need to be respectful. I mean, the church is filled with people that come from so many places, lows and high moments. For us to go up to someone and be like, why did you cut your hair? Like,
yeah.
Why do you care? Like, you know, why did you know, get your nails that color? Or why this? Why that? You know, how does it feel to do this? How does it feel like, it's just like, you need to let people breathe, man. You 100%. Need to, you know, you need to let people feel the love. And trust me, when people ask us questions, it doesn't feel very loving.
And I think here's the thing, you know, we are talking about low points. We're obviously talking about our experiences. And the message here is not church people are horrible and stay away from churches so that you won't get hurt. That's not the message we're trying to give. The message we're trying to give is the reality is that there are people out there who are disrespectful at church, at work, at a grocery store, at school, wherever you go.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a misconception that we believe that because it is church and because we are obviously all striving to be better and we're striving to be like Jesus, when you are met with someone that does not mirror that, you're like, okay, fine. I get it from, you know, work, because over there it's like people don't try to be something that they're not, or, you know, whatever. Here, you know, at school, you know, it's like everybody makes mistakes or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, even at church, you are going to be met with people that are A, working on it, B, never going to change, and it's up to you to change, or C, it's one of those things that it depends on how you look at it. Like, it really does depend on how you look at it. And, you know, as I'm hearing your, you know, experience, part of me is also kind of like, you know, because, you know, I know that as someone who hasn't really ever left church, and I've identified myself as a representation of the church, it is hard to hear when someone shares of a bad experience, because you're like, I wish I could have been there to have given a different perspective. Mm-hmm. I wish I could have been the one person that didn't treat you like an outcast that day and made you feel welcome, you know? Unfortunately, that isn't always the case for everyone, and we have to work through it, but it is hard to hear sometimes. And so, you know, as you're saying everything you're saying, you know, I admire the fact that one of the ways that you combated it was by changing the way that you saw the situation. Mm-hmm. And you made it more about, it's me. I need to determine myself at the end of the day why I'm doing what I'm doing, mm-hmm. why I go to church, why I do this. And it, you know, for me, my low moment happened after my dad passed away, which is fairly recent. We just celebrated his 2-year anniversary on March 4th. So this is recent. And yes, in my walk with God, did I make mistakes? Did I make decisions that I wasn't proud of? 100%. But I would say the reason why my dad passing away was a low moment was because I was functioning on autopilot so much that I thought, or I could even say I believed that I was more spiritual than what I was. So when I lost my dad and I was met with, how are you going to proceed? What's going to be your response? Are you going to take this the way that you feel, which is, I don't want to go to church. I don't want to go on Sunday and greet people and say, praise Lord. I don't want to go and serve in my ministry because I'm hurting. Or am I going to yet again be on autopilot and do it like I've always done it? This is the first time that I was really met with a situation where it's like, I can't be on autopilot. Mm-hmm. Maybe in previous instances, I was able to do it because it was a different kind of struggle, or if it was a different kind of situation that I was like, it's okay if I'm not 100% close to God because, for whatever reason. But this is the first time I'm in such deep pain. I don't want to be fake. I don't want to be up there and ministering or serving and give off a different kind of message that's contrary to what I feel. And it was hard. It was hard to show up on Sundays when you've been taught, yes, God is good, and yes, God is loving, and God is sovereign, and you're going through a rough moment where everything that you feel is yes, I know God is good, but I'm angry, and I'm confused, mm-hmm. and I'm hurt. And, it was so hard because, obviously, working at church, I remember showing up that first Sunday and I was dreading it, and it was still COVID time. So we were still sitting, relatively separate, to create social distancing. And I remember having, some people come up to me, and, the thing about when you lose someone, going back to the whole tact of, how do you approach someone who, has just come back? Some people are, like, hey, haven't seen you in a long time, or like, oh, you really went for it, out there,
Or va a llover.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, que milagro, you're here,
I'm guilty of that one. I'm sorry.
In the same way, I think that, when someone loses someone, there is a certain level of tact that you should have, right. But sometimes people don't, some people are like, ¿Qué murió? And you're just like...
I was there for one of those, and I cringe every time I remember. I'm like, really?
To me, it was always like, I remember receiving, messages, or I would have confrontations. And genuinely, I say this with love. I don't say this as I still work at church. I still love my church. It kind of goes back to how you see it. It's So I remember I would get a few, interactions with people that are like, oh, we're so sorry for your loss. But can you print this for me? Like, I hadn't even interacted with this person since my dad had passed away. So this was the first interaction I was having with this person, or X, Y, and Z person. And they wanted something, they wanted my help, but they knew that I had just lost someone. So they're like, okay, I got to say this first so that I don't look like a jerk, so that I can go ahead and, get what I need. And sometimes I was like, I would rather you just tell me that you need me to print something than for it to seem like you didn't mean it. Than for it to seem like you were just doing a courtesy for me, when this is something that is so real. It's so painful. And at the end of the day, I'm still going to help you. But don't make it seem like a checklist, And so I remember that whole time I was hurt. I was just hurting with the people around me. I was just hurting with, the church in itself. And I remember there were so many moments at work that, I praise God for Lula. There were times that I was just like, I'm just going to cry. Just let me cry, just let me feel what I'm feeling, because I'm in pain right now, and there were days that I was discouraged, and I made the decision with my husband to leave a ministry, because I told myself, I can't do this anymore. I can't stand in front of the youth and fake this. I need to deal with what's going on in my heart right now. And the reality is I'm going through it, I'm processing. And then there was all of these levels of guilt as well. That was like, I'm supposed to be stronger than this. Mm-hmm. As a Christian, why is this hitting me so hard? But as I've mentioned also on this channel, it's because of how much I was on autopilot and how little of my spiritual life and my relationship with God, I was actually putting in time for, that once this real big situation hit, it's like it exposed how far away from God I was. It exposed the reality. And this is why, you know, you like, to me, sometimes I've heard this described to me. Ay, mija, you're so holy. You're so nice. You're so in church. You're so good. I even remember when I started dating my husband, I got a lot of people like, why him? You should be with someone that's up there and preaching, because of the perception that people had from me. And I thought to myself the whole time, this is just a facade. Internally, I'm very far away from God. Internally, I have not prayed. I have not read. I have not fasted. And here I am, trying to do this because I'm talented. And I say that with as little pride as I can possibly say. I'm talented. And so it comes off as spirituality. It comes off as, this is a person who's close to God. And so when this happened, I realized I need a reset. I need to start all over again. Mm-hmm. I don't care anymore about what this leader thinks about me or this member thinks about me, whether they disagree or agree, if I'm serving in ministry or not, whether they think that I'm, not living up to the standard that they want me to be acting in because I've done this, this, and this, and this. For me, it was like, I need to figure out why I'm here. I don't care if you think that I could do 10 ministries. Am I really impactful if I do that? But at the end of the day, I'm losing my soul. I'm losing my relationship with God just so that I look pretty in front of a stage and I give a message. No, I'd rather be not involved in every ministry, but I'm okay. And I'm actually genuinely going to church because I want to go to church. I'm actually genuinely getting on my knees and I'm worshiping because I want to worship. And so for me, it was the same thing. It was, I'm no longer going to put so much emphasis on what the people around me think about my situation and what I can produce, but I rather seek God because I want to. And it was literally around that time that I literally started to pray, and I was like, God, you were there with my dad for his low moments. He had his own low moments. He had his own moments of, I don't know where to go from here. Mm-hmm. So in the same way, Lord, let me find you. Your word says, if you seek me, you will find me. So let me find you now in this season where I seem like I'm this Christian and I'm involved and I'm all of these things. Take away the title, take away the leadership, take away the employee card. And can you just see Kez? Can you just see me for what I am, a sinner? Can you just see me for what I am, someone who doesn't read their Bible every day, someone who doesn't always say the right thing? Can you meet me here and have a relationship with me, because I'm ready. I'm ready to have a genuine relationship with you. I'm ready to genuinely give my heart. And it was at that point that I started to heal. It was at that point that I started to commit my life, and I actually started to become the person of, I don't want to go to bed without reading. I don't want to go to bed without praying. Am I a perfect Christian and I do it all the time? No, I'm not trying to give that message, but I am living the life that I'm living because I want to, because I care about what Jesus thinks about me. I want to meet him someday and have him tell me, what did you do with your time? And I used to think, oh, Lord, I'm going to be able to say, I did this, I did a life group, I was in praise team, I did all of these things, I worked at church, I never missed a Sunday. But the more that I went through this process, I realized I haven't done anything. I haven't really worshiped you with in spirit and in truth. So what have I done in this time? So I think, as I'm sorry for getting emotional. I think this poses a question as far as, what do you do when you're ready to come back? You're ready to restart your relationship with God. Like, where do you go from there? What is the first step? Let's say you haven't been in church for 5 years, 10 years, however long it's been. Or let's say you're like me. You haven't missed a service and you're there, but deep down you are drying out. How do you restart having a relationship with God on the right foot?
Man, that really tug at my heartstrings, because I was there for all the process, and and to see a friend break in front of you, it's hard. And to not be able to conjure up the right words that can comfort her and breathe life into you was hard. Not in the sense of like, oh my God, now I'm responsible. No, but it was hard in the sense of like knowing that no matter what, it was up to you. Like I could say the nicest things, or I could not say anything, just leave it to it. But at the end of the day, that was hard of like, she needs to go through it.
Yeah.
And I want to be here, and I'm going to be here, but it's up to her. So, but anyway, I'm so sorry. I think for me, it was holding on to the positive. Holding on to the positive. Like for example, and I'm pretty sure as I'll be speaking, you'll probably can think of like, okay, yeah, with my situation with this sister. That day, yes, despite her trying to make me feel a type of way, there were people that came through for me. There were people that saw me for like, okay, this isn't right. This wasn't right, and so I think those gems, you need to hold on to those gems. Those, there were people that I don't know how word got out that she was being a certain way, but they bucked me up. They told pastor, they shared it, they talked to me before leaving. They were like, we're so sorry, that shouldn't have happened. Like they made sure that I was taken care of in a way.
Yeah.
So, come Sunday, pastor spoke to me and he's like, I'm really sorry, Lula, like that shouldn't have happened. Because Sister Erica, his wife, was one of those people that defended me and reached out to me that day. And so I cherished that. I was like, okay, just as we have people that might lack tact that day, or that day they were also having a rough time and
they lashed out.
They lashed out. There are also people that are going to see the good in you, or they're going to treat you
the opposite,
and you need to hold on to those. Exactly. You need to hold on to that, and you need to and that's again, that's a reinforcement of what is beneficial to me, holding on to that person's behavior and hurtful behavior, or holding on to these two people trying their best to make me feel welcome,
right? To
make me feel like I can come back, And I thought, logically speaking, it makes more sense to lean on the positive, to lean on like, okay, I'm gonna hold on to the bits and pieces of good
people.
Yeah. And it was that, and after that, I think it was just that, what's beneficial, asking myself that question constantly, what's beneficial to hold on to this that is going to destroy me and possibly destroy my relationship with this person, or destroy any door to have a better relationship with this person, right? Or justify and put myself in their shoes and try to understand, so I take care of my heart, and I don't taint it with, well, they've done this before, and then this, that I failed. Yes, million times I failed, but I haven't left. I haven't left, and I love my church. I think there's a lot more good than tactlessness, right, or lack of common sense, or critical thinking. I mean, there's a reason why I haven't quit my job at church either. I just really enjoy what I do, and right. And now I don't. I think we've come to that conclusion. I don't take advice, or I don't take criticism from people that I wouldn't take advice from. Mm-hmm. So if so and so tells me one day that dress doesn't look good on you, okay, thank you, sister, or whatever. It could be outside of the church as well. Like, thank you so much. I appreciate the comment. But if that person is not someone I would take advice from, then her or his right. words are nothing to me.
And we gravitate generally towards the negative, because it is easier. It is easier, right? Yeah. Especially when you're hurting, especially when you already have something that you're going through, or an insecurity, or something you've been going through is exposed, and then someone, like, the term, kick a dog while it's down. If someone comes and only throws another stone, yes, it is easier to stay down. It is easier to take that and say, this is why I don't go to church. This is why I don't believe in leadership, or people, who go to church, because they're all hypocrites, But at the same time, like you said, where is that getting you? That mindset, that result, that conclusion, where is that taking you? If it's taking you to a better place, and you're healthier, and you're a happier person, and you're all of that, like, it's like, okay, it's not often that's the case. If anything, usually when people have walked away from church and they're like, oh, it was because of this, whenever church is brought up again, it's, you respond to it with resentment. You're like, see, that's why I don't go. But I don't care. Well, it sounds like you do care. Because if you didn't care, it wouldn't affect you. It wouldn't hurt you. Right. It wouldn't even matter to you. But any time that you start to get riled up about a certain thing, it usually it's because it's hitting something. It's hitting somewhere. A
little nerve.
I think for me, one of the things that helped me get through it, aside from, yes, as you were saying, I was like, yes, I can think of a lot of people that were the contrast to those people. There were people who were genuinely concerned, friends who were actually there, who were genuinely checking up on me, and because I was hurting, it was easier to focus on, well, so and so said this, and so made me feel this way. But what pushed me through it was that kind of like, this too shall pass. And I realized that at the end of the day, I wasn't tempted to walk away from my faith. I wouldn't say that. But it was hard for me to go to church for a time. And so one of the things that I had concluded was, at the end of the day, regardless of who says this or who says that, what is the truth? The truth is, I like going to church. I want to go to church. I need to go to church. So what do you have to do? You need to brush off so-and-so and go to church. And I think that that's something that I've learned throughout, is what is truth, what is necessary, what is beneficial, that is actually going to get me to the next stage in my life. am I moving forward? And I have moved forward. In the last 2 years, I'm not heading every ministry, but you best believe that I'm moving forward. You best believe that I am a stronger person and I am stronger in my faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we start to stop looking at man as the measure for our faith, we'll heal, and we'll also start to really enjoy and understand what this Christian walk is all about, because men will fail you. And I also think that they're there to test you. They're there to bring out what's really in your heart. If we're willing to step out of church because someone made a comment about our nails, that says something about us. What's going on? What's the deeper root? Now, are there people out there who have genuinely gotten hurt by someone at church? Someone said something very disrespectful to them. So, yes, there are people who have genuinely been hurt by the church. But it still poses the same question. What's in your heart? And sometimes in our hearts is, I do want to go to church. I need to go to church. But because of this, I'm refusing to go to church. I'm refusing to accept any kind of change. So what would your advice be to someone who is like, I'm not sure what move I need to make now that you're out of it, now that you're out of your low point, now that you're in this place? And it doesn't mean we're not going to go through low points again. I should also comment on that. I had a low point this morning, so like you're always going to be in a learning basis in your relationship with God. But what would you give advice to as far as someone who's trying to figure out, I'm having a low moment right now, I'm trying to get through it right now, and I don't know how to get out of it?
My advice is would be to, in simple terms, if you really don't want to stay there, in that low point, because I'm pretty sure it feels sickening almost, and you've tried other means to get out of it, and it's just isn't clicking in or isn't working, then to see yourself as, okay, if I were to have a relationship with God, how would that make me feel? To see yourself in the future having a relationship with God. I'm not saying to see yourself reading the Bible every day and doing all this Christian-like behaviors, because those will come on their own.
Right.
But to see yourself, okay, if I were to make changes where now I know I'm loved by God, how would that make you feel? And how would that make you act and behave? To see yourself doing that, and if that makes you feel, with power, it makes you feel stronger, it makes you feel like, yes, I think I would like that, then go for it. Go for it. And I don't think that you will ponder that and think, you know what? No, that doesn't seem like the right thing to do. I think going to exactly to what you were just saying of like, how you just said it and I forgot it. You tapped into it, which is why you brought this up, of like, what oh my god, brain fart life. I don't know. Well, anyway, I'm probably gonna get to it, but I'm not right now. So to just look at, that's how I want to be, to have a vision of how would I look if I were to have my life in order, if I were to have my emotions in order, if I were to have my acts, my behavior in order. And all of that will be centered once you realize, but I can only do that effectively with God as my center.
Yeah.
So how do I start? Where do I begin? And I think after you envision yourself like that, I'm not saying it's easy, but a lot of things will come into place of like, okay, yeah, I could start by going to church again. I could start by praying, if my praying 5 minutes, and then making it 10 minutes, and then making it 15 minutes, and then maybe keeping that 15 minutes, but consistently,
Right.
Because I know for me, my low points have always been, do I want to stay here?
Right.
No. Okay. Then where do I want to go? Okay, here. Okay. What do I do to get there? No, pues this, that. So, yeah, I think always retrospective questions of, is this really
What I want to be.
what I want to be? Do I want to feel this way in 5 more years, 10 more years, 15 more years? Do I want to be hurt with this sister for the remainder of my time in church? No, I don't. And by the way, this sister, we get along for what we need to get along, and we respect each other, and she apologized. And so, like you said, is church is a place where multiple people go with their own ideas, with their own, sometimes their own interpretation of the word.
Right.
And they lay it out on you. And, sometimes they do it with love and patience and understanding, and you receive it. And sometimes they do it forcibly, but you can still receive it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that would be my. But before we move forward with your advice, I wanted to ask a question of like, when you were going through your low moments and you were like, okay, would you say that you surrendered, or you were kind of like, okay, God, take the wheel? Or was it more like, give me the equipment and I'll handle it from there? Or
No, I think it was a surrender. Yeah, I definitely surrendered. I think that I don't think I was intentionally trying to be fake. I think I should make a point of that. I think that when I was going on autopilot, I do think I believed at some points that I was okay spiritually and I was close to God. And then there were those moments that I'm like, oh, okay, well, I struggle with this. And if I probably was closer to God, I probably wouldn't struggle with that, or, so-and-so, like things like that.
self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I think that when I had that moment, I also, like, because it was such a big thing for me, it exposed a lot in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of low points do that, whether it was out of your control or whether you put yourself in a situation and you went through a low moment, you see a lot about yourself.
Right.
And you realize, why am I here? Or what got me here? And so when I started to see how hard it was hitting me and the feelings I was experiencing, and how hurt I was getting about the church, I think that revealed a lot in me, that it's like, okay, you've been on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
You really have not been connected to God as much as you think you have. And so, very much in what you were saying, how do you want to proceed? You already know that going the way that you were going got you here. So, do you want to keep being in the same boat, or do you want to try something new, something that I hadn't tried before? I don't think I had truly surrendered everything and really left it in God's hands. Like, I need you to restore me and renew me,
Mm-hmm.
and I need change. So it was a complete surrender of, I'm just done. I'm done, and I want to do church and my Christian walk in a completely different way than what I've been doing it. And after I did that, then it started to be a joy for me to seek God. It didn't seem like a chore.
Mm-hmm.
It started to become something that's like, I can't wait to wake up so I can pray. I was actually waking up and thinking, the first thing I think about was, I need to pray about this, or I would wake up praying. And those are things that, didn't normally happen, because now it was a constant thought. So part of my advice with, I feel like you could relate with someone who has actually physically stepped away from the church. But for me, it's like, let's say you're in church and you are on autopilot and everybody thinks that you are so close to God and you have some relative self-awareness about where you're at, and you know that's not where you should be, or you know that you need to surrender, but maybe because surrendering seems scary because you are exposing yourself, really think about, why do I care if someone finds out or someone notices that I need to grow in this area? So, for example, there were so many times that they would make altar calls for different things. You know, who needs to restore their relationship with God? Who feels like they've backslidden and they need a change, a touch from God? There were so many times that in the past I was like, this is for me. They're talking to me. But I'd hold myself like, I don't want anybody to think that I'm not close to God. I don't want anybody to assume that I'm not doing good spiritually because I'm a leader. I'm supposed to have it all together. I'm supposed to be helping others who don't have it together. But now I don't care. Because at the end of the day, it's, if I'm going through something, at the end of the day, the only one that's going to suffer the consequences of not going there or not doing what I need to do is me.
Oh, yeah.
It's not Lula. It's not the next person. And so, yeah, maybe there is a person who is like, oh, I didn't know she was struggling with anxiety. And she went to the altar call when they said everybody who needs, a touch from God because they're struggling with anxiety. Yeah, I'm struggling with anxiety and I need God to help me through that. And so it is surrendering. It is surrendering. So I would advise this person, first and foremost, do you need a break from ministry? Do you need to step down? And I know that it's going to come off like, sister, you're from church and you're supposed to be encouraging people to get involved. Serve. But at the same time, at what cost are you serving? Are you serving just because we need help? Or are you serving because you genuinely, can? And there were a lot of times that I felt like they're not going to be able to do it without me, and I'm the only person that's involved. It's like, no, God will provide. Step aside, you will see how God moves. And then I got a chance to get better. And so, first question, do you need a break? And if you do take a break, ask yourself, what am I ready to give to God and surrender so that I can truly be restored? And I could have my relationship be different because I don't like the way that it is, and sometimes it's going to take humility, and it's going to take you to strip yourself off of some titles or strip away from some perceptions that people might have of you, because it's always nice to have someone tell you that you look so close to God and you're very spiritual, but it's not the truth. So what are you willing to give away in the hopes of actually having a genuine relationship with God? So I would say surrendering is a big part of it. And once you've surrendered and you're, whether you've taken a break or you haven't taken a break, I think at that point, it's the only question is, are you done measuring yourself based off of what people think? And I know that we do believe in having people judge you. We believe in judging others because it's what keeps us accountable. But it should not be the only deciding factor over your life. Are you measuring yourself with what the Word of God says about you?
Amen.
That's the main thing. So one person might have an opinion about what you're supposed to be doing in your life, but does that match what the Word of God says about your life? There were some times that I thought, so-and-so might want me to be, for example, this is an example, in praise team again. But the Word of God is calling me to be a loving person to my neighbor. Or the Word of God is calling me to not be a liar. The Word of God is calling me to, serve as if I'm serving the Lord. Mm-hmm. So before I even get to that, am I doing any of this? Now, you could argue, when do you know when it's time for you to get in ministry? Because what if you're like, well, I'm never going to reach it? I think it really depends.
Never going to stop lying.
I think it really depends on how you view the church and how you view others. if you can manage to say, hey, I'm going to put myself in a position to work with leadership and church and understand that people are human, people will make mistakes, and I'm not going to let that affect my worship, my attendance, my ministry, you are in a great place. Please sign up today. But if there is any hint of you like, oh, if it's not at my time, if it's not within my means, if it's like these attitudes of, you're not ready. You're not ready to be in ministry. If you have a mindset of, if this person is rude to me one more time, I'm going to come at, you're not ready. You're not ready. You need to first learn how to serve others before you can minister, because we think that ministering is just being up there, but in reality, it's serving. It's serving others. So how can you serve others genuinely when you're on autopilot? How can you love others genuinely when you're on autopilot? You can't. You can't. So I think that would be my advice to that.
You need to be intentional, I think. Jesus. And what about an advice for those people that are already in the Lord and they might have a hard time welcoming others?
Okay. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this because I experienced it, but I also have a different perspective. So first and foremost, to the person who has had an experience with people not welcoming them, I'm sorry that was your experience. But unfortunately, that's probably never going to end. It's always going to be a reality of church. Any church. I always took it upon myself to, like Lula said, as cliche as it sounds, be the difference. I didn't have many friends at the beginning. I didn't have a popular circle at the beginning, or still, even it's just the two of us. But for me, it was a lot of like, if nobody's going to say hi to me, then I'm going to say hi to someone else. Someone that they're also not looking at. And a lot of the times, and I've always taken pride in this, a lot of my friendships were because I went up to them, down to my husband. I would go out of my way to say hi to someone. I was like, you know what? If there is a general reputation that this ministry doesn't tend to welcome, I'm going to be the opposite of that. I'm going to welcome. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to be true. I'm going to be humble in it. And so I would say that to the person that may not receive the welcoming. If you're going to wait for someone to say hi to you, I pray that someone does. But sometimes it falls on us. Sometimes it falls on us to just be, strong enough to say, you know what, it's okay. I'm gonna be the one to say hi to someone else. Now, for the Christian who is not welcoming, for the Christian that is having a hard time in this area, I will say this. You will suffer the consequences of your ministry at some point. Maybe right now you are in a very high place in your ministry and you're doing good y todo, and you're like, I don't need to welcome anybody. I don't need to say hi. I don't need to give time to anybody. Or you're genuinely unaware that you're doing it. Those things tend to have its own consequences. And sometimes I've noticed it, how some people are like, I can't receive this person's ministry because they're rude. They're proud. They're very indifferent. And so you think that your ministry is having an impact. You think that people are receiving what you're putting out, but you're not. And and this is where it's dangerous, if you're not serving in autopilot and you're genuinely aware of what you're doing, you will notice the consequence. But if you are serving in autopilot, you'll never notice. Mm-hmm. You'll never notice what you're doing. You'll never notice if you're hurting anybody. You'll never notice if your ministry is being impactful because you're doing it on autopilot. And so therefore, why is someone going to notice what they're not doing when they're just on
one
autopilot?
Thing after another, yeah.
So I think for those people, it's more of how we respond to it than the opposite. Because I genuinely believe if you are concerned over, am I welcoming enough? you're already on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
If you're already asking that question. Most people who are not welcoming don't know, or they're proud, and that's a whole different issue. But most people, I don't think, are aware that they are being that way.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think that because we are the administrator and the secretary, that it is our job to be welcoming and to go up to people and say hi and everything. And while I would agree to a certain extent, I could also argue that yes, we are employed, and that being approachable and being courteous falls within those like descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
But what doesn't fall within our descriptions is if it's genuine or if it's fake. And I think you transmit that. And so there's been times where I've said hi to people, like you said, on autopilot. And people, I'm telling you, people receive it on autopilot too. People are like, oh, God bless you. Yeah, but there's other times where I'm intentional and I'm like, okay, no matter how I feel today, I want to make people feel welcome, and they receive it as well. They receive it. And so I do agree that sometimes when you're on autopilot, you don't see.
You don't always see.
You don't always see.
And this is why you need grace.
Yeah.
That's why it goes back to the whole thing of, at the end of the day, is you being hurt? That's not how you formulate that. But is it better for you to remain in a hurt state just because of what this person said or did? Is that more beneficial for you in the future? And so it's at that point where you have to make that decision of, it's not that important, or rather, I don't want it to be that important that it's going to steal away the purpose and the blessing and the promises that God has for me just because of this experience. And it's something that will take time. I think my final question to you would be, what if someone says, I'm contemplating moving churches. I don't want to walk away from God, but I want to move churches. What would your advice be to that?
Why? I would ask why, and depending on the reasoning, I think I think my advice would be, if your reasoning is because of someone, that's gonna follow you. That's gonna follow you to the other church, to any church you move. But if the reasoning is because I do think I can heal somewhere else, I do think I can find refuge somewhere else, then try and see, and hopefully you do, and I'll be praying for that. But if it's because, oh, so and so didn't say hi to me, it's been a while, and so has never paid attention to me, and things like that, I think you mentioned it. When you put your faith in man, they're always going to fail. Y Dios lo dice, maldito el que cree en el hombre. ¿Por qué?
There you go.
Porque es like, todos vamos a fallarle a alguien. Todos somos el villano de la historia de alguien. And porque we've hurt people before. I have. And so, but just as I hope that person doesn't linger on that and doesn't hold me accountable for an immature moment, I'm also not going to do that to people. And I'm also going to give grace and be like, you know what? It hurt at its moment, but I'm glad that I have so much joy and love that is not going to stay in my heart. So my advice would be, look within, look at the reasoning. If it's because of a person, pray more. Pray more. Do what you need to do to take care of that situation. But if it's because you've been praying about it and you genuinely think going to a different church might do me good, go ahead.
I think for me, with that question, as someone who has moved from churches, I think it really falls into, yes, what is the goal? There's no perfect church. There's always going to be someone that is is just going to be an interesting individual, you know, and you're going to have to deal with it, you know, because you're the if I love the saying, if you find a perfect church and you go there, you've already made it imperfect.
Yeah.
You're that person, you know? And so you're never going to find a perfect church. You're never going to find, maybe they have an amazing welcoming team, but their children's ministry is just terrible. Or like there's always going to be something that your church is going to struggle with, because we are imperfect people, just like we have an imperfect government, because we have imperfect people in our government. So I think it really depends on what the goal is. But ultimately, I would say sometimes it's better for us to face what we need to face within our church, because it's at that point where you're like, I'm worshiping God not because of you, but because I want to, but because this is what I need.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you go to another place, you make it about others. You still make it about others. So this, we hope you enjoyed this episode, guys.
Yes.
You know, I know it was a deep conversation, but ultimately we want you to know that you're not alone. We've also had our low moments. We've also had our failures, our hurts. But at the end of the day, if we're talking about this, it's because we know how valuable and how important a relationship with God is. And if you've lost it or you haven't found it, this is your opportunity to try again or to find it. And
let's just say hi to people. Let's just be welcoming overall.
Right.
If you make a mistake, make sure you go and apologize. Repair is so important to people, that you recognize, hey, I messed up, I shouldn't have said that, I'm so sorry. I don't know, como yo, I've been guilty of telling people, oye, va a llover hasta que te veo, and it's like, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
And I have gone up to that person and be like, I'm really sorry, no debí de haber dicho eso, disculpe, fuera de lugar. And I do think that people are like, oh no, yes, thank you, because you are telling them, with that small apology, you are telling them two things. One, you recognize that it was a mistake, and two, you are telling them you're that important that I need to not just recognize it, but let you know that was a mistake.
Right.
And ultimately, people want to feel important. People want to feel that they're welcome. People want to feel that despite where they've been, there's a place where they can find refuge.
Right.
And let's be more welcoming. Let's have more tact. let's have more common sense. And on the other end too, do your work. Do your self-reflections. Hey, is this a good reason to not go to church? Is this a good or rather, because maybe there are so many good reasons why not to, to some people that are hurting. But is that a beneficial reason not to? Is that going to perpetuate your hurt and keep you there in that low dump? Or is that going to, or is finally saying, no, I'm going to go regardless, going to be far more beneficial and far more helpful and get you out of that, low moment. So, yes.
Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything. And, click the subscribe button, click the like button, find us on Spotify and Instagram. Please follow us and show some love. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.